Well, I didn't really have that much of an impression when I was younger. I grew up in the UK until 1979, when I moved to the States, and that was the year that she became Prime Minister. So I think most of my impression was from, being older back in the UK and hearing the multifaceted opinions that people have about her, and getting, better understanding through, just how divisive she was. One of the things that I have found in playing historical characters is to put aside all preconceptions and opinions, specifically and particularly in regards to Margaret Thatcher, in order to be able to start not just from scratch, but also because in making choices within scenes or within the arc of the series The Crown, one kind of has to have a deep understanding of how they arrived to those decisions, how the character was able to take the actions and develop those attitudes and policies in her case. And so much of that had to do with how she was brought up, and the particular household she was brought up in, and the Methodism under which she grew up, and the fact that her father was an alderman, and the fact that she worked in the family shop, and she started as a shopkeeper's daughter and ended up as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. It faced with some pretty hardline, both Tories and a strong Labour Party against her. That to me is where the fascination lies. Essentially, she's a self-made woman. And against all odds, the odds continuing into her political life, she managed to be the first woman Prime Minister of Great Britain. So it's got to be complicated, right? Mm-hmm. And the fact that she was as divisive as she was tells you just how complicated a character she was, which is fine as an actor. Yeah, contrast, except the fact that she, as far as she was concerned, she was just putting one foot in front of the other and following what her passion was and what she knew intrinsically she was good at. The conversation about feminism in her world probably wouldn't have applied to her, I can imagine, given her mindset. And so, we have to remember that in a way, because, when you're filming The Crown, all of the characters are through the prism of The Crown. And so we don't really get that much into her politics. We get as much into her personal life in this season, and her relationship with her husband and her children, as we do into her politics. And we don't really enter into the battle about feminist or not feminist. Back then, the fact that she was even a prime minister as woman was enough, for many to tick many people's boxes, I think. I would agree, actually, with Emma in terms of the mannerisms and understanding the psychology behind her first, and getting the physicality right, and that clothes ends up being the cherry on top almost. And certainly with her, getting into that wig definitely helped. And I'm not sure about the clothes-wise. Certainly, walking in her particular shoes, for instance, never in my life would I wear any of the shoes that she wore. And so, walking in the way that I learned to walk as her, and then in those shoes, just added so much pleasure and helped so much. And the particular really uncomfortable nylon stockings that she might have worn, that I swear they found in the bottom of a box in a Salvation Army, because I don't think they make them anymore. Clothes, you know, she was really, really interested in her clothes, and had been for the majority of her life. And I was fascinated by that most of her letters that she wrote back to her sister when she was in college have to do with clothes. And so much of it is about her spending within her budget, which is, you know, fascinating given she was queen of budget in this country. But she would talk about the tiny little length of ribbon that she managed to pick up for like sixpence, you know, that she was planning on putting on which hat that she had been given by Aunt so-and-so. And it was adding things like silk and velvet and feathers and stuff like that to suits that she would wear to, you know, her Conservative Party meetings and etc., or out with a young man that she might have been interested in at any given time. Well, I think from my understanding, she always felt like she was on the outside. You know, it's an incredibly classist environment, and so I think she was very self-conscious, from what I understand. And part of her, you know, trying to fit in more, whether it's through dressing or through changing her voice or through sheer will, was about, you know, being heard, being listened to, being supported, and being on the same playing field. But I think she definitely was self-conscious about it. And she, you know, she grew up as a monarchist, and I think she was a monarchist till the end, even though the relationship with Elizabeth was complicated. You know, she didn't really have much of a relationship with any of the other royals, except, as we would see, you know, it would be state dinners or going to Balmoral once a year. And so her primary relationship was with the Queen. And I think that, you know, she believed very much in the monarchy, and that it served a very important purpose in the country. But that, you know, as long as they kept to their side of the agreement and kept themselves to themselves and did their openings of things, etc., and let her run the country, everything would be okay. And the minute there was overlap or any kind of persuading of or advice or speaking against, as we see in episode 8 potentially, that felt like the Queen was stepping out of bounds. What Pete has written in the second episode of Balmoral is, you know, on the one hand, yes, being disrespected and completely feeling, you know, that she really, really didn't fit, and that she was, you know, treated poorly, but it was mostly to do with how much she felt like she was wasting her time. I mean, the state of the country at that particular time, and that she inherited, and the state of the country for a period longer while she was in power, was really dire. You know, she only slept 4 to 6 hours a night, and she worked non-stop. So the idea that she would take time off to watch people throw cheese just confounded her. She just did not understand why she should have to be subjected to that, or why they would want to be subjected to that. I don't think she understood at all. And so that's what you're seeing there, is just her feeling completely trapped and looked down upon. I don't think those were two combinations that Thatcher sat with very well. I mean, a lot of work with a couple of different voice people. But also, one of the things that Pete was interested in from the beginning was that it still be grounded in a little bit of me. So it's quite easy to parody her voice and to go over the top in a way that makes it hard to then identify with. And I think what's beautiful about his scripts are that all of these characters, no matter what preconceptions we have or what our opinions are about them, they are human beings, and they are, very often going through similar human situations that we lowly commoners are, and that is what makes the story so interesting. I think that we can identify in some way and imagine that we could have similar reactions or feel anything towards them at all. And so if you go too far into Thatcher, the screecher, or Thatcher, when she gets into her particularly preachy voice, it's very hard to connect with her. And so it was also trying to find the balance of being Thatcher, but at the same time, but just understanding, I guess, so that we can get an understanding of who she was and how she operated and what was motivating her. I mean, the Queen would be fun. I so rarely play anybody who doesn't be opinionated and isn't, forceful somehow. The fact that she is bound to
serve.
Is bound to serve and to keep her feelings and her thoughts to herself. I struggle with, and so I'm sure it's fascinating to have to do that as a character. But probably Margaret.